So this is quite a treat to be able to talk about Morontia. I mean, not necessarily an easy assignment, but I don't know if probably a lot of you have seen this image. This is an engraving from the late 19th century, from 1888. And as I've long been aware of this engraving, but just recently thinking about Morontia, I'm beginning to realize that this was kind of a predictive, maybe a little bit of a predictive indication of Morontia reality, which was so soon to be revealed, thinking about the beginning of the process of the preparation of the Urantia book, happening not long after this. And many people have written about this engraving, trying to understand what it indicates or what it says. And here's one example of somebody's interpretation where he says, "Our crowded thoughts are ushered away, and we are left kneeling at some unseen altar, hands outstretched, ready to see." And this is taken on the name of piercing the veil. So we learned from the Urantia book that the Morontia realm is this vast realm of reality that is already existed in parallel to our own reality, but it's never been revealed. So we've had no way to know about it. But I just got a feeling that this is sort of almost like a predictive indication that this is coming. And the other thing that's interesting about the timing of this is right at the beginning when the split between science and religion was really starting to get aggressive. Who has the final word on reality? Is it the scientist or the religionist? So we have this sort of introductory comment from the book where they say that our difficulty in arriving at a more harmonious coordination between science and religion is due to our utter ignorance of the intervening domain of the Morontia world of things and beings. The local universe consists of 3 degrees or stages of reality: reality manifestation, matter, Morontia, and spirit. So that language there, I think, is fascinating, where they describe it as a stage of reality. So that can be interpreted 2 ways. I mean, a stage can be a place along a progression, but it can also be a stage, like in a theater, a stage of action where things happen. So I think both of those meanings are true. So we learned that our soul, which is Morontia, our Morontia soul, is formed from the substance of this intervening domain. But we need new language even to talk about it. The soul is born from factors that are known, mind and spirit, but the soul itself is made from an unknown category of substance that has no existing terminology in our vocabulary. The Morontia stage of reality manifestation has been in existence all along, but we've had no way to discover it. Without the aid of revelation, we are unable to recognize it or even suspect its existence. It's a very fascinating thing. So as Urantia book readers, maybe we're, in the 2nd or 3rd generation or something, we're the first humans on this planet to be introduced to this reality. So this is quite an opportunity, I think. And we can say, now the cat's out of the bag, about Morontia reality. And we have a huge opportunity, I think, to be among the first pioneers to experience and explore this previously undiscovered but newly revealed stage of reality. And this image kind of sums up where we are now, right? So in the first image, the guy's crawling through a hole in the sky and discovering there's more going on than anyone suspected. Here, we can be open about it. This is where we are today. We can become involved now with Morontia reality. We can discover it, work with it in any way we can. So the question is, how do we do that? So I'm going to try to hopefully provide some insight or some helpful understanding that can move us in that direction. So Morontia now, this is an opportunity we have. And so my remarks are kind of divided in these four different questions, like what is Morontia, what is Moda, and how is Moda related to revelation, and then Morontia's selfhood, that's how we get off the planet, that's our key to eternity, and then finally, of course, as always, Jesus blazes the trail and shows us the way. So to get into this quote is the Urantia book introduces the notion of superadditive outcome. which is crucial to understanding Morontia. Even though this is about chemistry, they say that the entire science of mathematics, the whole domain of philosophy, the highest physics of chemistry could not predict or know that the union of two gaseous hydrogen atoms and one gaseous oxygen atom would result in a new and qualitatively super-additive substance, liquid water. So you can guess where we're going. Morontia is a super-additive outcome. Now, simultaneously with, well, all of this, there's this emergence of this new concept of synergy. So the concept of synergy first appeared in theology and the natural sciences in the mid-19th century, but with a meaning that was less focused than today's understanding of the term. It was not until later, after the Urantia book was published, that the idea of synergy came into popular use with the definition that we have today. And this is a very important term to identify the process that's involved in the creation of Morontia. So the way synergy is understood now is that the interaction of two or more agents or forces so that their combined effect is greater than the sum of their individual effects. So you have an outcome that's greater than the sum of the parts. And to go with that, we also have the concept of complemental engagement, and that's when something makes up a satisfying whole with something else. So you have two mutually completing parts in a complemental relationship, and that relationship can be synergistic. You can have synergy as a result of complemental relationship. And we're going to see how that plays through all of this. Anyway, so this concept of synergy, even though it wasn't available when the Urantia book was published, it characterizes the many complemental personality relationships that are described throughout the Urantia book. So Michael and the Mother Spirit are a big example of that. You know, they're different. You know, he's comes from the Father and the Eternal Son. The Mother Spirit comes from the Infinite Spirit. They have a complemental relationship. They're different, but they create a completion when they work together. And the same is true with human gender, or can be. But this concept of complemental relationship also applies to the combining of mind and spirit in the inner life. So here we have sort of the clearest statement of how Morontia is created. So they say, as a mortal creature chooses to do the will of the Father in heaven, so the indwelling spirit becomes the father of a new reality in human experience. The mortal and material mind is the mother of this same emerging reality. The substance of this new reality is neither material nor spiritual. It is Morontial. It is Morontial. So when we make a decision to do the Father's will, that kind of gives permission to the adjuster to engage with our mind, or it creates a pathway, you might say, or a synapse between mind and spirit. And it's our choice to do the Father's will that enables that. It releases the adjuster to work in our minds. So with help from this post-publication concept of synergy, I think we can formulate the following as a fundamental universe principle. And we'll, you know, we can be, once you become aware of this, you can begin to see it in all kinds of situations. So the idea here is that complemental synergy creates super-additive outcomes. All right? Is that making sense? Complemental synergy creates super-additive outcomes, something greater than the sum of the parts. So the Morontia soul is an example of such an outcome. Personality choice to do the Father's will produces a creative synergy between the indwelling spirit from the Father and the material mind from the Mother Spirit. The superadditive outcome of this synergy is experienced as the birth of a new felt identity. So this begins to suggest how we experience Morontia. It's a new feeling of identity that we can experience. That's not just being in an animal body. It's not just having influence from spirit, but it's something that we create that combines those. factors. So the book explains, having been endowed with the living Spirit of the Father, you are therefore sons of God, children of God, sons and daughters. You survive your life in the material world of the flesh because you are identified with the Father's living Spirit, which is the gift of eternal life. So again, this is an identity thing. So as we identify with the eternal Spirit of the Father, then we can become eternal. But we can't become eternal in a physical body. We have to create a version of ourselves that's not physical, and that's born from this process of synergy. No God-knowing mortal can ever be lonely in his journey through the cosmos, for he knows that the Father walks beside him each step of the way. So this suggestion that God is always with us, if we ask for the Father's presence, same with the Mother Spirit, same with Jesus, this can be a companion to us. And when you have a new companion, it changes your feeling of who you are. So this companionship with God forever changes our sense of identity. And that's when this Morontia version, we begin to build this substance of Morontia identity in our soul. So when the values and leadings of spirit, just to kind of sum up, are combined with the complemental functioning of human mind, a new sense of self begins to emerge that is superadditive. This is the expression of a new reality of spiritual self-awareness that is something more than the sum of the effects of mind and spirit. The reality of this new combined identity that blends the physical with the spiritual can't be either. I mean, you just see that logically. It can't be physical and it can't be purely spiritual. It has to be something new with its own enduring substance. And that substance is Morontia. And then from the forward, Morontia is the term designating a vast level intervening between the material and the spiritual. So we're right in there, and our choices and decisions can manifest this new reality in our lives. So in another place where they talk about this, they list the three factors that contribute to the birth and growth of the soul. So along with mind and spirit, which are the first two, considered separately, the relationship between them is listed as the third factor in the creation of a soul. So I really love how they describe this. They say this factor is the relationship between the material mind and the divine spirit, which connotes a value and carries a meaning not found in either of the contributing factors to such an association. The reality of this unique relationship is neither material nor spiritual, but Morontia. It is the soul. Now, they also tell us about moda. And moda is a tricky one because it's one of those things that the Urantia book does a lot. So moda falls into the category of things that we cannot possibly comprehend, right? But the authors tell us about it anyway, right? In other words, the concept of moda is kind of like a big tease, because this is going to be a reality in the next life. Once we have a Morontia body and a Morontia mind, we're going to have this moda capacity, which we don't have now. It's not even possible in a material body to have that. But their description of it does help us to appreciate the profound significance of revelation, and we'll see how that plays out. Revelation is evolutionary man's only hope of bridging the Morontia gulf. Faith and reason, unaided by moda, cannot conceive and construct a logical universe. So this divergence between science and religion, right? How do we overcome that gulf? In the absence of moda, we do it with revelation. A few more comments about moda. Moda is a supermaterial reality sensitivity. So once we have a Morontia mind, Morontia body, we have this new sensitivity to reality that we don't have now. Morontia moda, this super philosophic sensitivity for truth discernment and unity perceptions. That's almost the definition there of what that is. We just have an inherent ability to sense truth and unity, which we don't have now, obviously. We have to work at it. Moda is more than a superior philosophy. It is the philosophy as two eyes are to one. It has a stereoscopic effect on meanings and values. So again, this is all kind of a big tease. Just wait, this will be how it is, but somehow cope with the way things are as they are. So as physical beings on an evolutionary planet, this is not Morontia reality. This is material reality. So I'm sure Morontia was probably taught in the schools of Dalmatia in the garden, but that's all been lost. So we're trying to, as always with this planet, we're trying to recover from so much that's been lost because of the rebellion. Anyway, they explain in the book that metaphysics, which is what we've come up with as a substitution for an understanding of Morontia, metaphysics has proved a failure. Moda, man cannot perceive. Revelation is the only technique which can compensate for the absence of the truth sensitivity of moda in a material world. So this is really underscoring the importance of revelation. There's some things that we cannot discover on our own. They have to be revealed. But once they're revealed, then we can experience and grow within this new understanding. So mortal man lacks the concept of Morontia mind and material, and revelation is the only technique for atoning for this deficiency. The highest attainable philosophy of mortal man must be logically based on the reason of science, the faith of religion, and the truth insight afforded by revelation as a stand-in for moda. By this union, man can compensate somewhat for his failure to develop an adequate metaphysics and for his inability to comprehend the moda of Morontia. So they don't have much good to say about our metaphysics, unfortunately. But, it's to be honored as the best human. Like they say in the Supreme Papers, you have to have a frame within which to think before you can even think. So this gulf between matter and spirit, how is that? How does that work? How can we bring that together? And from a human perspective, it's all been guesswork. So that's kind of what metaphysics is. It's our best guesses for how that could maybe be accomplished. So here we now move into the idea of Morontia, selfhood. So this is a big deal because we're so used to thinking of ourselves as being material. We have a physical body, obviously, and physical brains and all that stuff, but that's really not how we get it, how we have the potential for an eternal life, because we know our physical body is going to die. So this Morontia selfhood idea is obviously super important. They say that the selfhood of survival value, and I'm sure you're all familiar with this, but it's part of this understanding, selfhood of survival value, selfhood that can transcend the experience of death, of physical death, is only evolved by establishing a potential transfer of the seed of identity. So here we're talking about identity again. The seed of identity of the evolving personality from the transient life vehicle, the material body, to the more enduring and immortal nature of the Morontia soul. The actual transfer from material association to Morontia identification is affected by the sincerity, persistence, and steadfastness of the God-seeking decisions of the human creature. So I put together this little chart. I don't know if you can see it, but it kind of maps out how this works, how we get from physical identity to Morontia identity. So we kind of start out with physical identity where, okay, I am my body, that's who I am. Isn't that obvious, right? And I'm aware of my physical senses, and to go along with that, I tend to be exclusively self-conscious, kind of trapped within my own head and think that's like kind of all there is about me. And I look for validation externally, and my decisions tend to be driven by physical needs and desires. So this is our starting place. But where we're trying to get to is a Morontia, this transferring of the seed of identity, You can see how each one of these becomes transformed. So instead of being my body, I now understand myself as a son or daughter of God. That's very different. Instead of being exclusively aware of only my physical senses, I now become aware of divine presence. Instead of being exclusively self-conscious, I now enjoy inner companionship with God. Instead of looking externally for validation, I can begin to find inner validation, which is a pathway to originality. And instead of my decisions being driven by physical needs and desires, I can begin to guide my decisions by the desire for truth, beauty, and goodness. So I've got this hanging on my wall at home because I just like looking at it because it's a good reminder. If I just stay in the right column, right, I'll be developing my Morontia soul. I mean, that's pretty much, it's a pretty straightforward formula there, I think. Just doing those things and realizing, exercising those realizations, maybe would be a way to put it. So let's talk about Jesus for a minute. So, Jesus, of course, is our guy. And, they say that we rejoice. This is Jesus in one of his Morontia appearances. So that must, just thinking about that, probably, I can't imagine what that was like for the apostles. Well, and the other people who experienced it. He rose from the dead. How did this even happen? This is an unprecedented event in the history of human civilization on this planet. So Jesus is talking in his Morontia appearance. It says, "You rejoice to know that the Son of Man has risen from the dead, because you thereby know that you and your brethren shall also survive mortal death." So this is what was so significant about Jesus' Morontia appearances, is it was a revelation of Morontia reality. There it is, we're standing right there and talking to them. But then, of course, he adds the qualification by saying that such survival is dependent upon your having been previously born of the Spirit of truth-seeking and God-finding. So going back to that first quote where we desire to do the Father's will, that's what creates the synapse between the Spirit and the material mind so that this can happen. But he's standing there as a living demonstration of the fact that we can survive mortal death. The mortals of the realms will arise in the morning of the resurrection with the same type of transition of Morontia body that Jesus had when he arose from the tomb on this Sunday morning. And then a couple of other comments here. Through the appropriation of the faith of Jesus, mortal man can foretaste in time the realities of eternity. Throughout his entire experience, Jesus was truly both human and divine, even as he yet is. So we are not Jesus, we're not creator sons, but we do have this combination of human and divine within us. So he's showing us the way. He's blazing the trail. He's demonstrating what's possible for us. So that's one of the reasons I think many of us just love Jesus, because he does that for us. And then finally, I just kind of like this image, how this goes together. At one point, Jesus says that the soil, the dirt, the soil of the evolving soul is human and material. But the destiny of this combined creature of mind and spirit is spiritual and divine. So in this image, this is Josiah, with Jesus giving sight to the blind on a material level. But he also does that on a spiritual and Morontia level. He allows us to see our true nature and what our true destiny actually is. So I like that thought about Morontia and the way he explains it there. So anyway, I hope that some of that made sense and is helpful. But it's a opportunity, I think, is what I feel most strongly about it. That we have this opportunity that we haven't maybe fully realized the significance of, that we are in a position with the revelation of being among the first to really experience and develop what it means to have this Morontia dimension of growth potential. They even talk about forms of Morontia communication between mortals that are practically unknown on Urantia. But suggests that there could be a lot that could go along with Morontial development as we begin to understand it more and exercise it and develop it and carry forward with this potential that we've been given through the revelation only now. This has not been available until now. So this is a big deal, I think. And, whenever the Urantia makes up a new word to tell us about something, I always kind of sit up and pay attention, because they wouldn't do that if it wasn't super important. So here we have Morontia reality, our Morontia soul. We have an understanding of how it is, the mechanics of how we can survive death, but it also applies during our life while we're here. So that's kind of the... All right.